turn off Willingly with that.
Hi guys, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. I'm your host Moose, and this is my producer Nick. Our main discussion is about Islam in the 21st century. However, we will critique other religions and ideologies. We condemn any form of discrimination, violence, misogyny, slavery. We do, however, embrace many perspectives and free speech if it is factual and correct, and not based on any hate. Throughout the show, we will be exploring different religious beliefs, practices, and their impact on society, ranging from politics, interpersonal relationships, and mental health of believers and non-believers. We hope to create an open dialogue for those who feel they're not heard, especially those who have doubts and have left their belief systems. If you are interested in exploring the complex topic of religion and wish to be part of an honest and open dialogue, this is the show for you. We also welcome feedback and discussion from our audience and listeners. The Gin and Tonic Show is a free speech platform where you can express your ideas without any fear of violence and repercussions or any consequences. Please do join our discussion in the live chat as well as the comments. Thank you for stopping by and enjoy the Gin and Tonic Show.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. My name, I nearly forgot my name. I know it's Mustafa, but call me Moose. Call me Moose. And I am joined by my producer, Nikhil, over here, and a very cultured, very well-mannered. He will come into your dreams and tell you history, society, and humanity is complicated.
It is.
And how are you fellows doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. Nice weather outside in Toronto for once.
For once, yes. With Toronto, it's been like we're still kind of stuck in the what do you call it, the brief end of winter, like the
The weather's been moist, and not like the good plant growing moist, but like the anal herpes moist.
And also
it's
Nikhil, this news will be very disappointing to your family, probably, if they are cricket fans, and to probably all cricket fans. Pakistan has finally become the number one team in one-day international cricket. So if there are any cricket fans, this is a time for you to rejoice. So I apologize to your relatives as well, too, Nikhil.
Yeah, I don't watch fucking cricket, man. Just tell me what the
Well, keep in mind, your relatives might be pissed, though. So they'd be a bit pissed that a Muslim team has reached the top after a long time.
Oh, and Culture Jenny, just to that question, the best answer is not yes or no. It's only to white people.
Wait, what is AA? So if anyone would answer, are you racist? And the best ones is yeah, it's like what am I? I just looked at the private chat. You too.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah,
filter.
it was a thing in private chat. This
Filter.
became a little bit confusing.
Filter. All right. So today we were going to discuss a very, very popular gentleman by the name of PragerU. The gentleman, a channel. Like, I was never a fan of PragerU, but they've been recently been used by not only just like by Muslim creationists, but by like Christian creationists, by certain religious people. Like, it's at times it is religious propaganda, and what do you call it?
I got the perfect meme for that. Let me bring it up.
I managed to say moist, like herpes. But, darn it! It's basically like Ben Shapiro and PragerU. Darn it! This, the perfect cartoon combination. Oh man, this is why Stops is going to be mad at us. Like, why did I hand my channel to these guys? This turned it into a comedy show. So yeah, let's what do you call it, Nick? You have the videos ready?
Yeah, but you want to react to some?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I could react to them after I did. I was curious about PragerU though.
All right, yeah. Let's start with PragerU then.
Yeah.
So let me share this. So I actually have this one short that we'll react to before we get to the PragerU stuff.
Yes.
All right.
Let's react. Well, I can't hear anything.
You can't hear anything?
Yeah, I think you have to turn up the volume in the YouTube thing itself. You have to turn up the volume.
Let me.
Yeah, YouTube Shorts are weird. I don't blame you. YouTube Shorts are very weird.
All right.
The Quran that you have today was not the original Quran, and in fact, it was actually compiled 100 years after Muhammad died.
For those who aren't aware, the Quran was actually memorized during the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, by many of his companions. And if you read Bukhari 4987, you can see that the Quran was put into one physical mushaf, one complete physical copy, during the lifetime of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Somehow it wouldn't surprise me if an ex-Muslim thought Abu Bakr lived 100 years after Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Actually, we don't think that. We don't think that at all. So I don't know who came up with this BS, because what do you call it?
What is thought instead is that the sources that say that the Quran was written down directly comes much later.
Yeah, so the Bukhari itself comes 200 years after the events itself.
Hello, Bugsy.
Hello, Bugsy. Yeah, so the sources that Ginny is trying to say is that sources like Sahih al-Bukhari, for example, comes 200 plus years after the death of Muhammad.
Yes, and the first Qurans that we do actually have are significantly different from what we know becomes the standard Quran later, or is the standard Quran that we know today.
We don't even, and one thing to add to Ginny, even though we have the Birmingham manuscript, the Birmingham manuscript has 3 chapters, 18, 19, and 20, and they're not even complete.
Yes.
So they're not complete chapters, and it's from 645 CE. So this isn't a complete Quran. A complete Quran comes much, much later. I would say
there are also differences in all of these earlier Qurans.
Absolutely. And we have a more complicated history too. But by the way, I immediately thought this guy was stupid when he said 100 years after Muhammad or 100 years. It's like, no, I'm
And
seeing
one
in a lot
one
of
thing that
circles.
gets me is like the guy's outfit. He's still wearing the cap, the long kurta. And this guy just assumed he was a ex-Muslim for saying that.
Yeah, it's so weird because just because a guy looks like a certain outfit, he could have been a Christian too, for all you know. Because I've seen a lot of Christian websites or Christian preachers on Speaker's Corner make some massive claims of how the compilation of the Gospels is better than the compilation of, let's just say, the Hadith and the Quran. But when you kind of think about it, even the Christian sources, they're not exactly the greatest either. They're not exactly eyewitnesses, as for someone like Jay Smith would say, oh, all our eyewitness accounts. Like, shut up, Jay. They're not all eyewitness accounts. Like, most of the Gospels were written 70 AD and after. So most of the adults during that time were dead. And this is the earliest manuscripts we find are actually from 150 to 200. So when you look at the earliest manuscript, the 70 AD itself is just an estimate of when it was probably written, when you actually analyze this. So this gets more trickier because even earlier manuscripts of, let's just say, the Gospel of Mark has no resurrection. It ends on 16:8, where allegedly he's alive, but then there's the guy in a white clothing inside a tomb, but it's not Jesus. And they never see Jesus alive. It ends on a weird cliffhanger.
I kind of reckon that they should start looking for Jesus in Mexico.
No.
Because
You'll find Jesus.
my theory is that Jesus isn't an actual like Middle Eastern guy. He's just a Mexican guy named Jesus.
This is why I am not allowing you to go to Mexico, because you'll start looking for a Jesus.
Oh, I already jumped the border there and got caught. Had to ride my way back to America.
Exactly. So next time,
the border guy was like, "Are you fucking stupid? You could have came in here legally. What are you doing? Like jumping the border?"
And not only that, you can come across as Mexican too. So you're illegal both ways.
All right.
This is why. Then you're giving Trump's wallet strong argument. Anyway, enough with the comedy. So it says here.
Musa.
I hear the version of the Quran had a disclaimer. This is the word. I am skeptical of this. Again, it would be very surprising if actually this came, but interesting to know.
It's a joke.
I know
it's supposed
it's
to be a joke, Moose.
I know it's supposed to get. But interestingly, the biography of Muhammad from Ibn Ishaq says something like, only God knows best. Because he's saying, I am allegedly this happened.
Are you sure that's just not like an old version of only God can judge me?
It is. But yeah, it's sometimes, what I'm saying is sometimes in a joke, there's some weird level of truth in there. Some weird sentiment of truth. So I would not be surprised. But anyway, I know. Let's continue with God versus atheism. Who's more rational? Oh boy. I'm going to finish my donut.
You don't want too much food in your stomach. You might puke because of the cringe.
Don't worry, I can handle it.
Is it rational to believe in God?
What's your answer?
Fine, rational.
It's completely irrational. That's the very first irrational thing. That's an irrational question in itself.
I'd say the whole concept of religion is to have faith. Where faith exists, logic is not present.
Logic disappears completely in matters of faith.
Faith is the antithesis. I'd say faith is the antithesis of logic in many ways.
Iblis advocate here. I would say that most of our, fundamental assumptions, our axiomatic assumptions about, for example, logic and the world are in many regards faith-based.
Now, keep in mind though, when you actually apply the method, right? The logic today, that how we understand, is based off of like evidence. We want evidence.
Yes,
What we're
but
saying is
you know
material
that,
evidence.
yes, but remember, your ideas about evidence, your idea that you can get evidence, or that evidence actually exists as a concept, is based upon a faith that what you observe with your eyes, or what you can observe with various instruments, is actually evidence, or that the universe actually works as you think it does through these instruments and through these feelings, or through these
But then
ways of
where
observation.
the heck that's not exactly faith then. It's more of a, what do you call it? Because evidences can present different results and can
No,
change
no, no,
our
no.
understanding.
It's you know, it's faith that you actually can observe things about the world using evidence and such.
That's a very that's just kind of confusing the
This is
definition.
extreme metaphysics and metalogic.
Yeah, I think you're kind of going like a little too complex, little too complicated.
Yes, but I'm saying that if you're going to take this complex, you can actually argue that we do have some faith-based assumption. I'm not against that, but what I am against is when you assume, for example, a creator by using the same standards of evidence that you wouldn't apply on any other situation. You're begging the exception, and that isn't coherent. That is my issue with many of the arguments for
Say
God.
that again. I'm something.
My issue isn't that you actually have faith in something, because certain things we need to take them on faith. But my issue with taking God purely on faith is that you do it by certain standards that you would never apply elsewhere.
Absolutely, yes.
You become incoherent doing that.
Right.
That has always been my argument, rather than that the idea about faith itself, as just assuming things without prior evidence a priori, is false.
Right. So you're sort of looking at faith as a concept rather than And also,
I just have to say one thing on there. It's basically that logic doesn't show that it's not about whether logic can show God or not. Because logic can prove that it's better for students. Like there's a comment here that explains it as well, right? They basically say that logic says that it's better for students to go out and graze for lunch. However, that it's ridiculous because we don't have proof, or we have proof that you shouldn't be eating grass all the time. So there's a difference between. So I think what they're trying to say is that there's a difference between what he's claiming is logic and then verifiable hard evidence. And you can logically explain pretty much anything, but atheists become atheists not because of logic per se that he's defining, but more so strong scientific proof that something does not exist. And one fallacy is the God of the gaps that they do, religious folks do.
Yes.
Just because science hasn't discovered it doesn't mean science cannot explain it at all.
Yeah, Drastic puts it best. He says you can have faith in something based on some reasonable expectation, based on evidence and experience. None of that applies to God, or faith in God, that is.
There's also a third category here. I can say that you can have faith on something because you need to have faith in order to get evidence and experience in a sort of meta knowledge way.
What's
regarding
more so than faith? I'd say it's pattern recognition.
Sorry.
Yes, but even that pattern recognition and such actually does require a certain faith in that you actually believe that you can recognize these patterns, or that the patterns actually exist.
But then, isn't that more of a hypothesis, though?
Yes, but it's a faith-based thing that you can't really prove this we are going into very high level metaphysics regarding
it's a
logic
bit
and
like, it
ontology.
because like it's more on the what do you call it, on the philosophical side if you're thinking about
Yes.
it. And I'm not a huge fan of philosophy because it's like arguing whether the black cat is inside a dark room or not. And if anything, philosophy would make it more complicated and say, what is cat? So I think like, that's, I'm never a huge fan. But I've seen some philosophical arguments. And I'm the kind of guy who's like, I'm sorry to say this. I sometimes tell them, like, where's the evidence? Like, it's just ideas. You're just giving me, like what you said earlier.
No, to be honest, your evidence is based upon actually some axiomatic faith assumptions, but that's very high level meta. My issue is still, I don't think you should just assume God as a faith concept in the same way.
So, like, in the same way, like, basically, so you're kind of categorizing like faith as a different, but not the same as the faith in God.
Yes, faith is a larger concept.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And there are some implications, which is why I don't want to, categorically remove faith, because you could argue that then you remove everything.
Yeah, I think it gets a little more like,
This is one of those things where I argue against postmodernists, that you actually do have to have some sort of axiomatic assumptions about the world actually existing.
Yeah, like, keep in mind, though, I think it gets a little too, like, metaphysical at this point. And I think what we're trying to do is kind of bring...
Yeah. But I will probably go back to this, because I suspect he will use this sort of argumentation. I can disprove it using this meta.
But yeah, let's see what Peter Kreeft has to say. Because we within the first two words he said, it's like, okay, you've already started to make a mistake over here, which is like, you're just asking, is it belief in a God rational? But the rationalism is not necessarily applied to God. Like, sometimes rationalism just completely disappears entirely. You can make rational arguments or using philosophy and such, but they're not exactly strong arguments. All right, let's continue.
Many people think that faith and reason are opposites, that belief in God and tough-minded logical reasoning are like oil and water. They are wrong. Belief in God is far more rational than atheism.
Oh, no, of course he's going to assume
Let us hear his argument. Let us hear his argument before we...
All right, let's go.
Logic can show that there is a God. If you look at the universe with common sense and an open mind, you'll find that it's full of God's fingerprints. A good place to start is with an argument by Thomas Aquinas, the great 13th century philosopher and theologian. The argument starts with the not very startling observation that things move, but nothing moves for no reason. Something must cause that movement, and whatever caused that must be caused by something else, and so on.
Wait, pause. He's going to go with the causation thing, isn't he?
Yep.
Yes, but let him continue. I have an idea to counter this.
All right, let's go.
The causal chain cannot go backwards forever. It must have a beginning. There must be an unmoved mover to begin all the motion in the universe, a first domino to start the whole chain moving, since mere matter never moves itself.
All right, there is some ways you could counter this argument. The first is that you could actually argue that matter actually does move itself, or that, matter, or not just matter, but energy generally, because matter and energy, and even arguably the laws of physics themselves are intertwined. So you could imagine that it is actually, there is some sort of higher rule that does create spontaneity, or there isn't any rule to the universe. This second option I will not abide by, because I will argue against it, because that leads to some sort of absurdities. Then the third way is also to argue that, which is my personal argument regarding the prime mover is that yes, you can have an initial causator, something that causes the initial movement, and that everything from that is deterministic in my view. But nothing says that that prime mover must be intelligent or thinking.
Yes.
It just must be a cause, a cause in itself.
Yes, absolutely. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean it is a god, even, or gods. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It could even be just an.
It also needs to be sempiternal, that is to say, outside of the universe due to various logical reasons. But
Yeah.
still, that's not the same as being an intelligent god. It's just that the causator of the universe must be outside of the universe at first, before the universe.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be, like you said, an intelligent being. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So let's.
I mean, now both I and him have assumed that there is we have faith in that there is some sort of cause that caused the universe.
and
This
again,
is the faith part.
and
But
keep in mind,
it doesn't require you to have faith in God. It just requires you to have faith in causality, and that the universe, is a result of causality.
though, Ginny, wouldn't you argue that it's more of an we're assuming we're kind of making the assumption because he's posing this argument. We're kind of going along with the assumption rather than faith. Would you think?
I would say that since we can't actually in these sort of metaphysical, since it's outside of the universe, we must actually kind of act upon certain faith-based assumptions.
Oh yeah, it's a faith-based assumption. Yes, that's the correct terminology.
If we begin to say that we reject faith at this moment, we will be rejecting our own assumption, and thus we will be incoherent and self-contradictory. This is why I said that I am not against faith, but I'm against this sort of that it must be God.
Right. Okay. I think let's continue where he goes from here.
A modern objection to this argument is that some movements in quantum mechanics, radioactive decay, for example, have no discernible cause. But hang on a sec.
That's a thing. It's not no discernible cause. It's a discernible cause that we are yet to figure out.
That's
There's a
one way
huge
of looking
difference.
at it. There are some that argue that quantum physics and the like, which are connected to this, actually are self-causing, and that they aren't bound by deterministic factors. Though there are others that are just saying that they are in a greater, context. Since I am not an, physicist, I can't say what is more likely, but I can say that from a philosophical standpoint, it sounds a lot like, kind of like the free will of the gaps, or the self-causation of the gaps, kind of, when you argue that it just happens
the God of the
randomly.
Gap fallacy, I believe it's called, right?
Yes, I've argued against the concept of free will using this sort of thing as well, because free will is also one of these things that that if it exists independently from physical laws, because otherwise it becomes, per definition, a result of deterministic factors, and that's not free will.
I'm going to make a statement here, and Moose and Culture Jenny, if you guys can give your thoughts on it. Every logical fallacy has been used to explain God, and every argument for God is a logical fallacy. Would you guys say that that's a fair kind of thing to say?
No, I would say that, both statements are wrong. Because I can still imagine some arguments, not for the existence of God, but regarding God, that aren't fallacious, but are based upon axiomatic assumptions that I wouldn't approve of, rather.
Well,
but I would say purely for the existing.
Mm-hmm. For existing, then yes, I would say majority of the times there are a lot of fallacies that are applied. But generally speaking, even with religious topics, a lot of logical fallacies do come about as well. So
yeah. I'm not saying that it is, yeah, exactly. Fukadja wouldn't need arguments for God if God existed. It would be obvious. Well, but I still kind of just say that it's important when you argue against something that is wrong, that you don't fall into pitfalls in your arguing against this wrong thing in such a way that you will self-create other systems that are also wrong.
well, keep in mind, I think the best way to resolve this issue is the believer or the man claiming to have the make the God claim. They bear the onus, the burden of proof, the burden of the evidence to
Yes.
provide said evidence. If they try to shift it towards you, who's saying, "No, I don't see this God," they're applying the fallacy of what's it called, the argument out of ignorance, which is it can apply to like, hey, I think unicorns exist. If the other person says, "Oh, you're crazy for thinking they exist," and then this person who initially made the claim will say, "Oh, prove me wrong." It's like you can't exactly prove the non-existence of unicorns because of you can't exactly. So it's same applies to a god pretty much, or angel.
Yeah, but for example, an argument
Yeah.
if that is coherent but have axioms that we disagree with the assumption of, then that argument can actually be logically coherent and logically sound, but axiomatically, according to us, wrong.
Yeah, and there are some logical arguments that people have tried to bring forward. But then, like, when you kind of dig in, it's like, okay, they are making a lot of assumptions. We're granting them way too much, what do you call it? The benefit of the doubt. Okay, and I think Gnosticism is more logical than Gnosticism because it is pretty clear that there is no God. The same way that there is, it is clear there is that both are fictional. Wait, what? Okay, we are ignorant about origins of life, but that doesn't mean there is a space for. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
All right. Yeah. Sorry for diverting with that question.
Yeah. Okay. So, oh yeah. Basically, in this sense, okay, agnosticism in this sense, okay, yeah, because like there's the argument for like agnostics, stating that there's no evidence for or against God, but then there's also like what do you call it? Oh darn it, drastic! Stop looking at what are you smoking, drastic? What are you smoking?
I want whatever Molly Drastic's doing.
All right. Anyway, drastic. Either you mistook a rhino for a rhinoceros for a a unicorn, and you probably mistook someone who has dwarfism on top of a rhinoceros, and I don't know why. How would you find that? Actually, I would not be surprised if you found something like that. The ancients probably saw something like that, and then they mistook them for leprechauns. And anyway, let's continue with this argument.
Second, just because scientists don't see a cause doesn't mean there isn't one. It just means.
But that's the God of the gaps fallacy right there.
Yep. Let's continue.
Science hasn't found it yet. Maybe someday they will. But then there will have to be a new cause to explain that one, and so on and so on. But science.
In that initial force. And that's why I'm a pantheist, right?
Yeah.
Because there's something behind it. But to name that as Yahweh or Allah or Krishna, I'd find it pretty stupid.
Absolutely.
Yes. Now also be ready that there are those that argue that causality actually does not exist, and those philosophical positions are separate from these. We actually agree here with or at least I think that we all agree that the causal chain is unbroken in reality.
Yeah, we can kind of agree on that. Let's continue with cause and the cause of.
We'll never find the first cause. That's no knock on science. It simply means that a first cause lies outside the realm of science. Another way to explain this argument is that everything that begins must have a cause. Nothing can come from nothing. So if there's no first cause, there can't be second causes, or anything at all. In other words, if there's no creator, there can't be a universe. But what if the universe were infinitely old, you might ask? Well, all scientists today agree that the universe is not infinitely old, that it had a beginning in the Big Bang. If the universe had a beginning, then it didn't have to exist. And things which don't have to exist must have a cause. There's confirmation of this argument from Big Bang cosmology. We now know that all matter, that is, the whole universe, came into existence some 13.7 billion years ago, and it's been expanding and cooling ever since. No scientist doubts that anymore, even though before it was scientifically proved, atheists called it creationism in disguise.
No one said that.
Yeah, I don't. There's a lot of like even
There is
within.
no good citation here, so I can't answer if this actually happened.
Yeah, and again,
Now, add to this.
Yeah.
And again, just like a lot of religious people also denied the evidence at first too. So this gets a little more complicated.
Yeah.
But yeah.
This premise, a very logical second premise, the principle of causality, that nothing begins without an adequate cause. And you get the conclusion that since there was a Big Bang, there must be a Big Banger.
Also, oh man, a Big Banger. Man, the choice of words.
I'm certain he even knew how that sounded. I just did because he wanted to say it.
Yeah, I think he just wanted to say banger. But yeah, Drastic has a good point. The Big Bang is not the beginning of the universe. It's simply the point that we can't say what happened before, if there was a before.
Yes,
I think
that's true too.
It's basically a singularity, the same way with what a black hole would have. We can't go past in our space-time continuum. That's the starting of time.
Yeah. Also, the Big Banger is the 100th name of Allah. But yeah.
All right, let's continue here.
Yeah.
I need to know about this Big Banger.
Yeah, there must be a Big Banger.
I swear to God, there's an amateur porn star with that name.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Oh God.
But is this Big Banger God? Why couldn't it be?
We predicted this immediately.
I can only imagine what happens in the Big Banger's bedroom. God.
My face is red right now.
I know.
How the fuck did they put this into a script without reading it?
How did they?
For an extremely Christian propagandist channel.
You would be surprised how much religious literature. I know this is the Arabic theological literature, but even medieval Christian literature is filled with innuendos and the likes.
Yeah, I feel like it's a result of a lot of rules about sex, but also a lot of suppression too. That has to come out in some way. I don't blame him. All right, let's continue with this banger.
Just another universe. Because Einstein's general theory of relativity says that all time is relative to matter. And since all matter began 13.7 billion years ago, so did all time. So there's no time before the Big Bang. And even if there is time before the Big Bang, even if there is a multiverse, that is, many universes with many Big Bangs, as string theories
and multiple Big Bangers.
Well, big bangers. Yes, we could even have multiple big bangers too. So it kind of
Says
makes
is
the theory.
mathematically possible.
Sorry, it actually promotes the theory of polytheism. It makes that argument for polytheism, if anything. So anyway, let's continue.
That too must have a beginning. An absolute beginning is what most people mean by God. Yet some atheists find the existence of an infinite number of other universes more rational than the existence of a creator. Never mind that there is no empirical evidence at all that any of these unknown universes exists, let alone 1,000 or a gazillion. The conclusion that God exists doesn't require faith. Atheism requires faith. It takes faith to believe in everything coming from nothing. It takes only reason to believe in everything coming from God.
Okay, stop.
I'm Peter Craig.
I have heard this nonsense so many times. Like, oh, our faith is based on something coming from nothing. Like it's a religion. It's just no.
No atheist says that. What the actual theory of atheists believe is that before the Big Bang, time cannot go back. Therefore, we cannot see that. There are still objects in the universe that are traveling currently past the speed of light. Then they can't be detected, actually. Are we saying that those objects don't exist just because we can't see them? No, they do exist. They just go past our observation. Same thing. The matter previous to the singularity is not something we can observe with our current measures of technology, which is what atheists say.
And this argument I've heard from also, like, even now Muslim preachers are adopting this argument and making it their own, and it's just getting annoying with the you know, what do you call it? Oh, it's they have this belief in the Big Bang, that we came from nothing. We're not saying that. Nobody ever claiming that we came from nothing. So it's just so, like, you know, what do you call it? Also, I got distracted by Fif Khaja. Allah didn't create the earth with the Big Bang. The earth was joined with the sky, and God separated them. Oh yeah, this is the Zakir Naik claims this is the Big Bang. Apparently, 2130. Zakir Naik says, "Oh, this is the Big Bang," but in reality, this was taken from a Sumerian creation myth, in which Enlil separated An and Ki, which is sky and earth. And earth was his mother, sky was his dad. He gets born, he separates his mother, has sex with his mother, then creates life. That's
and what I actually observed is the Egyptian polytheistic tales are actually more believable than this, because Amun-Ra separating from causing a big explosion and having Amun and then Ra are it's a better explanation of what actually happened in the universe than the earth and the sky joining and then God separating them.
Yeah, because it assumes that earth and sky are like one entity before separating, but earth wasn't even there at the time of the Big Bang. So the earth's age, at least estimated age, again, we're only estimating the age of the earth. It's like what, 4 point something billion years old? I might be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nick.
Pardon?
How old is the earth relatively?
4.5 billion years old.
4.5 billion years ago, and it wasn't present in the time of the Big Bang. And then now, of course, Dras is like, brother makes a Big Bang. Oh dear Lord!
That sounds like Mia Khalifa and Johnny Sins porn title.
Yeah. Oh no, Jenny, what dua are you giving us now? Jenny, what are you doing?
It's you know, the one that Afif. It's the ayat, and you know it.
All right. Oh, and also
it's not
we
a
only got
mistranslation. It's actually directly what it says. It was one thing, and then we tore them asunder, and and made from the water everything
Okay.
living.
Yeah, no, I briefly thought I turned.
And so why do they not believe?
Yes.
All
So
right, let's finish the 15 seconds here.
All right.
Raft, professor of philosophy at Boston College for Prager University.
Join Prager University.
No, thank you.
Yeah, go away, Prager. All right, the next video by Prager. Keep them coming, Nick.
All right, but what was your opinion on this one before I pull that one up?
Jenny, I'd like to hear your overall like impression.
I mean, it was just presupposed God exists because God exists, pretty much.
Yeah, I found that this is not the strongest argument. This is, if anything, it's a relatively weaker or more common argument, and it says a lot of things, but it says nothing at the same time. So it's one of those videos, and it's disguised as like an info. I love the animation. I do admire the animation and how they present their videos. But you know, it gets a little like what do you call it?
Propaganda-esque.
Yeah, propaganda.
All right, let's start this guy. If there's no God, murder isn't wrong.
Oh no!
Oh boy! All right. Let's
start. No! Kill me!
Do you believe that good and evil exist? The answer to this question separates Judeo-Christian values from secular values.
What about Islamic values? And basically, every religion has these values. Because I love how he excludes the Islamic values, because Islam has the concept of good and evil as well. And I love how he proposes propaganda of, oh, it's Judeo-Christian. No, this concept existed in Hinduism as well. This concept exists in Sikhism. This concept exists in many ideologies.
Every society has had values of good and evil.
And even non-religious, we'll use it, communist societies. Let's just say that.
Even if they say that it doesn't call it evil and good, they usually have like order or chaos and such term for it.
Karma.
Yes, and basically there always is there's always the concept, I think in earlier, more primitive times we had...
I mean, even the Romans have castus and incastus.
Yes.
Which, by the way, incastus is from which we actually have gotten the word incest.
Really?
Yes, and castus is the word that later become caste, that we have used to describe the Hinduism. Because it means purity, pure.
Okay, interesting. Very fascinating.
And the ideas about goodness and the good things in Roman life was highly connected with castus and mos majorums, the mores of the majority, which was kind of like this idea that you have a function in society. You get your function, and you have your function, and depending upon how good you are at fulfilling that function of your family line, you're purer, you're better, you're more good.
Mm-hmm.
And you're more impure if you do not do your function.
And in ancient, I would go to ancient Persia or Iran, ancient Iran Shahar, where Iran was the land of light, Turan was the land of darkness in ancient Persian mythology. And so there's always been this concept that humans have had, and also with Greek heroes from the Greek times, technically the Greek heroes even existed during the age of the Mycenaeans and the Minoans. So
it should be said that all of these various concepts of good and evil have varied greatly from each other.
Of course, but
they aren't the same type of good and evil.
Yeah, there are similarities that we have, even in some modern aspects. There are similarities, but there are big differences as well too. So, and they have changed over the years as humans have evolved, or how societies have evolved.
They have changed to cultural Darwinism, because societies need certain values in order to survive.
Absolutely.
And thus certain values will be promoted and thus survive as meme complexes.
Yeah, and again, like for example, like with homosexuality was seen as evil for a very long time, until like we started seeing that as killing homosexuals, punishing them is wrong, or killing queer persons is wrong, or discriminating against them, and therefore we slowly started to like treat them as equivalent human beings. So that's why this is one example. And also slavery, why was seen as, it was actually seen as a biblical value in the 1800s before Abraham Lincoln's abolishment. And then post abolishment there was a slow but eventual switch. So yeah, like Ginny said, it just keeps changing because of how we need to survive. But yeah, let's continue with these Judeo-Christian values. Also, the interesting thing, even Jordan Peterson has started using these terminologies, Judeo-Christian values versus secular values. And it gets me so incensed because, like it's sort of promoting.
I can give him some credit that there are some certain values and certain ideas in Christianity that does permeate a lot of Western culture and civilization.
Oh, no, absolutely. There's no denying that. But giving them more credit than it's due, it's a bit like deceptive.
It depends upon which issue is discussed.
Yeah, like if you're saying Judeo-Christian values, I wouldn't want to boil what do you call it? I don't know how useful boiling a baby lamb at its mother's milk is useful.
Yeah, but those, I mean, the Judeo-Christian values are extremely broad as a category, but some of those, things within there, or are actually kind of fundamental for our current
even
in Western civilization.
You have to pick and choose, though. You have to pick. And
yes, but I mean, every even when you use the term, for example, Roman values,
yeah,
you have to be aware that Rome was an empire or civilization that lasted over 1,000 years in Western Rome and over 2,000 years in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, and also like with Rome, like the values kept changing. So,
yes, exactly.
Though a lot of the Roman values, like they still kept that some of the Roman values in what we call the Byzantine age, for example.
Yeah, but what I meant is more like this. I mean, I mean, for example, a chicken isn't the same as a T-Rex. But both a chicken and a T-Rex are technically dinosaurs. Not technically, they are dinosaurs, as birds are dinosaurs.
Right, yeah.
It's kind of like that when it comes to Judeo-Christian values.
Yeah, that's actually the best comparison. That's actually a pretty damn good analogy, actually.
Yes, I'm using a cultural evolution to explain Christianity.
A chicken and a dinosaur. All right, I'll use
cultural Darwinism applied on Christianity.
Yeah, I'll use that argument. All right, let's continue with PragerU.
Let me offer the clearest possible example. Murder. Is murder wrong? Is it
Yes.
evil?
Murder in our vocabulary means what he should have stated is not murder but killing.
Yes.
Because murder is per definition illegitimate killing.
Yeah, and keep in mind, with murder and killing, they have been used. Sometimes they're used interchangeably.
No, I mean the thing is when when, for example, if you look at the Old Testament, in the commandments, do not murder. It isn't do not kill. It is do not commit illegal killings.
Illegal killing. Yet, when you look at the legal killings, what you're allowed to kill is that's a pretty damn long list. which you're allowed.
Yeah, disobedient slaves.
Yeah,
You can kill animals.
Yeah.
Disobedient children. Yes, you can drag them out and stone them for certain
Oh, and if
infractions.
someone, even virgins, non-virgin women, if you find the non-virgin women on the city you pillaged, as Joshua found them,
Yeah.
you can kill them, but keep the virgin women as slaves. So it gets very like. Also, the blessed is he who dashes babies into rocks in the Psalms. So, Mr. Prager, you're not making a very good case.
Nope.
So there's a lot of murdering going on. Oh, also, you can even say God murdered the firstborns in Egypt, and indirectly, he also murdered the firstborns in Israel as well.
Oh, but that isn't murder, he would argue. That was just killing.
Yeah. As indirectly, God is causing everything, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, but then you do have the Christian concept about God's sacrifice. He gives us these abilities. It's a sacrifice on his part.
I was also gonna go with when God sends down Malach Hamasit, who eventually becomes Satan, by the way, to kill the David's people just because he conducted a census, and he was already mad at him. So it's like your God is sounding like a bit of a murderous lunatic. So you're not making a very good argument.
Where is this story in?
Drastic says PragerU gives the Dav of a run for his money in terms of low-level false claims and strawman. Yeah. Anyway,
yes.
let's keep going, Nick.
All right.
Everyone would answer yes, but now I will pose a much harder question. How do you know? I'm sure you think murder is wrong, but how do you know?
Because my God and Ultra Big Daddy PragerU told me so.
Well, also, like, I forgot to mention, I read it or heard it in an Islamic speech somewhere that during at least in the Islamicate world, again, Ginny, correct me if but this is from oral history or oral tradition. What is seen as murder and what is not seen as murder in the battlefield? If you're fighting somebody sword to sword and you end up killing them, that was not considered murder because it was considered dying in combat. It was the fair fight. If you stab someone from behind, let's just say, that was considered murder. Or if someone's trying to flee away from you and you stab them, in any setting, that was considered murder.
Yes.
Because it was an unfair situation. You had
there are some, because this is actually by certain of the scholars in Islam. I think it was Al-Mawardi that talked about this. He talked about that if the army begins to sound a general retreat, you're still allowed to engage them, kill them, unless they have actually also thrown away their weapons,
right,
and actually given up, like not doing a retreat, but actually doing a surrender.
Weapons down and surrendering, or sort of like if they're unarmed. And also there was this rule in the medieval times. I've heard it somewhere that there was a rule against killing an unarmed civilian or unarmed person.
Yes, there are actually pretty, because these things are actually written by the scholars, that you shouldn't massacre entire cities, and you should if you are to do something with the civilians, it is to enslave them, not kill them on the spot.
Not kill them and enslave. I think even Caesar argued against one of his generals that I think it's better to the captured peoples when he was one of the juniors in his camp. He said it's kind of better to make them slaves because they would be more useful to us, like they would be doing the labor, and it's now more hard for us to now, like, it's extra effort for us to kill them, and put them on like stakes, but like it was just I think the general disagreed with him. He wanted to set an example. So so there were different ideas behind like killing itself or murder itself. And heck, I think some countries do still have death sentences, like Pakistan, for example, still applies death sentences. That can be considered murder too, in some eyes, in some points of view. That is, again, in some
Yeah,
points of view,
but
not
I do though argue very much against that being a good argument against the death penalty, because when you begin to argue that what the state is doing as a punish, as a
So I actually have a
penalty action as being illegal, then you get into these sort of strange things where prison
Yeah.
becomes kidnapping and such.
Yes.
I actually have one question for Mr. Prager here. So if God magically says murder is good, does it become good?
Yeah.
Or is it my empathy that's saying that it's bad?
And also, you also want to inherently look at even our primal instincts too, right? Our
Yeah.
primal instinct is we do have a lot of empathy as humans, that is. But we also do have a wild side too.
I would say that I'm a bit more cynical. I would say that ideas about morality and such developed much more to control humans
Sydney,
and to hold them accountable in a social situation rather than to
Now, Jenny, you're too cynical. I know. You need a hug. Jenny.
Yeah, I need a hug. But still, I actually view morality and view ethics as much more of a practical matter for society rather than something that is,
Immoral thing, yeah.
that is something that exists outside of society.
Right, yeah. And yeah, let's continue with PragerU's argument of like why murder is wrong.
If I asked you how you know that the Earth is round, you would show me photographs from outer space or offer me measurable data. But what photographs could you show? What measurements could you provide that prove that murder or rape or theft is wrong?
Oh no!
The fact is, you can't.
Is he going that direction? Like now, I love how
but these are value judgments, and value judgments are subjective.
Yeah,
Subjective doesn't mean useless.
And
money having worth is a subjective judgment made by society. But just because money is subjectively worth things doesn't mean that money is unimportant.
And keep in mind, he makes, you can show me the Earth is round, but no, I'm not that. He's also making a false equivalence. This is something called like you're looking at something on values or actions versus something more observable in the natural world. These are two separate topics altogether.
Yes, they are two separate ontological categories, according to me.
And by the way, Drastic has sent you some hugs.
Yeah, thanks you, Drastic. Thanks.
But yes, so yeah, it's a weird. I've seen a lot of people say, "Oh, you can't prove murder is wrong." This is kind of like a very deceptive tactic that I've seen.
I'm sure, considering your background when you were getting your education, you probably had ethics debates on this very topic.
On in my legal studies, right?
Yeah.
Well, keep in mind, apparently we had no room for debates. It was basically, we did have debates, but I think what we did determine was that what is recognized as a particular crime, for example, like, is it the actual arguments for us wasn't necessarily the act. Like murder, we recognize, okay, it's a crime, done deal. The issue was, how do we was there intent? Let's just say, so we have to have certain like categories, like, was there intent behind the murder? Did he have any other option? Like, what defenses can he use?
against to lessen his sentence, or let's just say in order to use self-defense as a defense, for example. So a self-defense would be like he, she, or they had no other option but to use self-defense, and that resulted in the killing of the other person or murder. However, there are also like insanity arguments as well, which rarely work, by the way. They work, but they don't lessen the sentence as much because you're still responsible. Also, you're doing and also the reason why we can show murder is wrong, and I think we studied that as well. It's the effects on the families. It's the effect on the loved ones and the mental health effects on the loved ones, the social effect as well on society. So I think from a legal stand, we're also looking at society as a whole, like how it affects the society. And so you have to we also have to kind of both think like the victim and the criminal in both scenarios, that is too, depending on if you're prosecutor or defense. So and this made an interesting argument. Like, you also have to look at the loved ones, that is, who were affected by this, or even if it was a murder of, let's say, a homeless man or woman or person, for example, it's still seen as a wrongful act in the eyes of the law. And then there would be, certain effects, like, because it would also set a precedent. We don't want to set a precedent. Like Ginny make the argument, like, yeah, it's to control society. Yeah, we don't want to set a precedent of saying, oh, this is okay, you can get away with this. So it gets very, like, it's more on the intent of the murder versus as well as, like, what the mind was thinking. Also, like, there's other categories like aiding and abetting, like, for example, trying to hide the murder itself. And then there are exceptions to, like, getting killed in combat, for example, like in with police encounters with criminals. But then there are also, like, if the police wrongfully kill somebody, there are consequences as well too. So it gets a little, like, muddled in that.
Yes.
In the fields.
But my entire point about morals are that they are ought statements rather than statement is.
Yes.
And
right.
Oughts are value judgments by definition, and value judgments are not objective existence. They are subjective impositions upon.
Oh yeah, they are completely
existence.
Subjective. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that they are unimportant, or that you, like, have seen this among certain people in academia that argue that, oh, this is just a custom here in, European, say custom I in the society X. It's just a social construction, these values, and thus we can ignore them, or just, go over everyone that thinks differently. No, that's not what it means. It just means that, sure, it isn't objective that it's like this, but it doesn't mean either that your ideas are, better, or, anything else.
All right. Yeah, let's continue with the video.
I'm against total nihilism too here.
Exactly. Yeah, and also, like, the big statement, you can't prove murder is wrong.
But you can't prove it's right either.
Exactly. So what are you doing here, Mr. PragerU?
All right, let's continue.
There are scientific facts, but without God, there are no moral facts.
Oh,
in a secular world, there can only be opinions about morality. They may be personal opinions or society's opinions, but only opinions. Every atheist philosopher I have read or debated on this subject has acknowledged that if there is no God, there is no objective morality. Judeo-Christian values are predicated on the existence of a God of morality. In other words,
Oh,
Only if there is a God who says murder is wrong, is murder wrong?
oh no. He went that direction, didn't he? He's like, because God. Like, that's his
Yes.
big, like, shield. Because God.
I mean, it's just opinions, man.
Yeah.
Sure, but it's opinions of the majority group.
And not only that, this is also like a Judeo-Christian opinion as well, too.
Yes,
So-
you haven't actually proven that your God actually exists and thus imposes objective
Yeah.
morality.
And not
All
only
you have
that,
said is, oh, there is otherwise. But what he's arguing here is that if God doesn't exist, then we are in this state, and thus we should believe in God. He's arguing for the consequences rather than arguing, a coherent, logical argument about why it is that objective morality exists. He's rather just imposing God because the alternative would be worse.
yeah, it's
But
like,
if it is worse or not worse, has no effect upon if it's real or not.
yeah, he's kind of like setting these imaginary boundaries, let's just say, or imposed boundaries. And what's interesting?
Like the Atheist Alliance have joined the chat.
Okay, yeah, no, there's no objection, morality stuff. Yeah, because
You could actually argue about objective morality with some philosophical traditions that aren't based upon God. There is ideas that if the universe is, deterministic, you do have a deterministic path of morality. I don't agree with this, but there does exist such arguments too.
yeah, and when you ask like someone like PragerU, which God? Because if he says Yahweh, but then Yahweh is part of a Canaanite pantheon, and Yahweh didn't exist before a certain time period. There were other gods before Yahweh, and El, or Elohim. El also existed at a certain time, but before that, El wasn't nowhere to be seen in history. And there are other gods too, so you can even make that argument for other gods as well. So you can even make this argument for Zeus as well. Zeus can be put in and say, hey, because Zeus said so, it's wrong. So that it gets, when you say God, it's like, which one?
And drastic measure Islam also has a pretty good argument. If a God exists, its morality would not be objective either. You do have I would also argue the same, but this opens actually the door to a very long, complex discussion about, theocratic judgment.
And this is exact. For morals to be objective, they would have to exist independently of God and what God thinks or wants.
You do have direct command theory, and you do have certain arguments for it that actually does kind of undercut that statement recommends Islam. So that I don't 100% agree that this necessarily must be like this, but that is actually pretty close to what certain theologians like Al-Maturidi argue, that morality is actually separate from Allah, and that God doesn't decide what is good or bad, but he rather follows what is good or bad.
Yeah. And also,
so this is actually a higher debate, which since this is a debate about metaphysics regarding God, and we have these assumptions about that God doesn't exist before this, it becomes kind of strange when we are going to discuss this. So maybe we should skip it. What do you say, Mose?
Yeah, I think it gets a little like, I think I want to finish the video as well too, to see what other arguments this PragerU, because we're barely halfway there and we've already found so many flaws in said argument.
Let's continue.
Otherwise, all morality is opinion. The entire Western world, what we call Western civilization, is based on this understanding. Now, let me make two things clear. First, this doesn't mean that if you don't believe in God, you can't be a good person. There are plenty of kind and moral individuals who don't believe in God and Judeo-Christian values.
I'll give him.
But the
I'll give him
existence
credit
of
for
these
that.
good people has nothing to do with the question of whether good and evil really exist if there is no God. Second, there have been plenty of people who believed in God who were not good people. Indeed, more than a few have been evil and have even committed evil in God's name. The existence of God doesn't ensure people will do good. I wish it did. The existence of God only ensures that good and evil objectively exist and are not merely opinions. Without God, we therefore end up with what is known as moral relativism, meaning that morality is not absolute, but only relative to the individual or to the society. Without
is
God,
relative
the
to the
words good and
society and
evil
individual.
Yeah,
are just
pause.
another way of
I think that is the case. No.
Yeah, and he has still not established. Though I should argue that there are actually good arguments against this when you believe in God theologically. But he has not established why it would not be that it's just God's opinion, or
Yeah.
why God absolutely leads to objective good and evil.
Yeah. And
There
also,
are arguments that you could make for this, but he hasn't made them. And that's an issue because he just assumes, oh, God's opinion is objective. But why isn't other ones objective? It's his power. Why does his power make it objective when others? Yeah.
And Drastic says many of those people who believe in God who do evil work for PragerU. I kind of give him credit for.
Still, I think we should still be a little bit wary of being uncharitable. It's better to be charitable and defeat an argument than be uncharitable and defeat a straw man.
Yeah. No. I was just gonna say, like, I'm giving him credit. Like, okay, yeah, those who don't believe in God do like good, and then, but then when he mentions the example of like there were evil people who committed evil in God's name, yeah, there are those. But then in their mind, they were doing God's work, and if you kind of look at it, were they really doing evil based on the Bible? Not necessarily, because a lot of them did believe that they were doing God's work. And biblically speaking, it would not necessarily be seen as evil, especially like witch burnings, for example, or like, what do you call it? A lot of the, we also have the conquests as well as like the forced conversions and whatnot. So it's, it's weird. It gets more like, you kind of have to, I think he's also oversimplifying a lot of things. What I'm seeing is oversimplification over what is more complex, so to speak. And I think it comes across as very deceptive. Yeah, I think we should continue. Should we, Ginny?
Yep.
All right. Yeah.
of saying
Continue.
I like and I don't like. If there is no God, the statement murder is evil is the same as the statement I don't like murder.
Oh, no.
Now, many
I
will
would say
argue
that is false.
Sorry,
I would
Ginny?
I would actually argue that is false.
Yeah. Yes. Just expand on your argument.
The statement is I don't like murder. The statement would be others around me don't like murder.
Yes, I think that's more correct of a situation, because it's the society that's determining it. And even I would argue that even religion was determined by society. Like religious values were affected by society. Religious rituals were affected by society.
There's a quite strong interplay here between society and religion. They affect each other in
exactly. Oh yeah, and
a kind of symbiotic relationship.
Yes, absolutely. So for some, so it's like he's trying to individualize it, but in reality, it's a society at work here, or multiple individuals at work here. And there is a strong consensus that murder is wrong. So, and also, he hasn't exactly defined murder as well, too, which I think we earlier pointed out. what is exactly murder. So, and whether there's a biblical definition, whether there's a legal definition of murder, or whether there's a he hasn't exactly defined it either. So you have to define your things before you kind of explain. But all of these things is, this is wrong, therefore God. But he's trying to sound more philosophical. But it's just deceptive. All right, let's continue.
Moral absolutes, people won't murder because they don't want to be murdered. But that argument is just wishful thinking. Hitler, Stalin, and Mao didn't want to be murdered, but that hardly stopped them from murdering about 100 million people.
Though
it's not a coincidence that
the society around him eventually hindered him from continuing.
Yes, and not only that.
And just because a moral system fails, or people don't act upon the moral system and thus fail to stop a moral evil, doesn't mean that the system itself isn't good.
And with Hitler, for example, he took advantage of existing anti-Semitism and existing racial superiority and certain methods of scapegoating certain individuals or segments of society or groups, rather.
Yes.
He took advantage of that and became a leader, but he didn't want to be murdered, but he ended up killing himself. So
yeah,
it's and I love how they always bring up Hitler, Mao, and Stalin. It's always they bring up these three guys. And
I wonder how many more people Pol Pot had to kill to be put into this group.
I know, because there are far more crueler leaders than I've seen than these three. I know it's a silly weird
it depends upon how you define it also.
Well, again, I would say more torture methods and stuff too. Like there was.
Oh yeah, personally, wild persons have definitely existed that are more,
more fucked in the head, I would say. I'm sorry, I'm not holding any punches back, but fucked in the head. Like
I would actually argue that. I mean,
they make a lot of these guys. They make.
There was this guy in China that thought he was the brother of Christ or something that killed how many during the Taipei rebellion.
Oh yes. There was this too, and I think there's also even
almost. Do you like my profile picture?
Oh darn you! This, you look like a perfect Republican candidate now.
Let me show people.
Oh man,
all right.
PragerU now. But yeah, I was also there was this Chinese empress who how she murdered not murdered but tortured certain enemies of hers. She made Vlad Dracula Wallachia look like a saint in comparison, and even Vlad was fucked. The method of the torture, I would say, Vlad Dracula.
Yes.
So,
but I mean, Vlad only used what was standard practice in the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah. So what he was using was just so and I read these other emperors. I'm like, yo, I was harsh on Vlad. I was so harsh on Vlad. And even then, the method itself is so gruesome in a way, and it's just whoa, there's some disturbing stuff.
I mean, we need to remember that pre-industrial societies were all of them were much more brutal than what we are used to today in certain ways. It wasn't a mass scale of brutality like in modern warfare and modern atrocities, but it was this kind of very visceral, personal brutality.
Yeah. And it was just so way too creative for their own good. Way too creative. When
all you have is a hammer, you get creative with the ways you can smash that hammer into someone.
Oh man. But yeah, let's say now Allied Atheists Alliance. Now we shouldn't
No. We are not
we shouldn't be
pro
saying this
this.
stuff. We're not approving this, okay? So anyway,
You're saying it
by the way,
lacks-
by the way, Vlad wasn't a Slav. He was a Valachian, which is a Romanian.
yeah, he was a Romanian, and
they are Romanian is more closely related to Latin than any Slavic language. It descends from Latin, in fact.
yeah, and he was one of Sultan, I think, what's his name? Mehmet's one of his very formidable rivals. Well, which eventually Sultan Mehmet got his head. So yeah, that was an end. That many people don't talk about, how Sultan Mehmet got his head in front of him. Anyway, let's continue. History's interesting, but let's continue with this.
Yes.
Rejection of Judeo-Christian values in the Western world by Nazism and communism led to the murder of all these innocent.
Oh
Was
no!
Hitler Christian?
Hitler was Christian.
No,
And he was.
I would actually argue that when it comes to Hitler's religious view, I would probably say that he was an atheist. He does make statements that are clearly anti-Christian, and he does say that, clearly anti-belief statements generally. And he also rejected the paganism that a lot of other Nazis were doing, like being sort of just superstitious idiocy.
No,
But
I would
it wasn't because of his atheism he did it. It was because of his racial ideas, his ideology.
Yeah, he still believed in a bogus ideology.
Yes.
That was.
I mean, you can be an atheist and still be an horrible human being. It wasn't due to his atheism. Atheism is just about the number of gods, in this case being 0.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that you become a good or evil person. That has other things to do with other things.
He did,
to do.
Many historians even argue that he did hold some Christian values as well too, especially because within the Christian community there was a lot of anti-Semitism, and he agreed in many aspects of Islam. He admired Islam, weirdly enough, and what do you call it?
Yeah, he did say that it has had a good warrior pathos. If I'm not entirely.
So he was.
But I mean, the fact is, I don't think that Hitler was, a believer in Christianity. I actually do think he was agnostic or an atheist.
I kind of.
But it doesn't matter. This is just guilt by association and should be reacted due to that.
Yeah, and not only that, with Hitler itself, like, he was supported by the churches around.
Yes.
He was supported. So, if anything, many Christians were, and many of the Nazis themselves in the administration were Christian.
This is just an association fallacy.
Yeah. So it's like.
So we shouldn't actually, even if I'm just talking about Hitler as a historical person, whatever he was with these things that aren't actually directly connected to the actions of, Nazi Germany, they are actually irrelevant. So it's just smearing atheism.
Yeah, it's and when they bring up communism as well, Russian communism.
No drastic measure Islam. He actually rejected that sort of cultism that existed in the SS and essay, and they actually said that it was superstitious stupidity, more or less.
Wait, what? He wasn't. This is more
the drastic measures.
Oh. I mean, you can because we don't know much about. We can't come to a conclusion because he made all sorts of, like Drastic says. I do agree with this. He had varying statements at different times, many contradictory statements.
Yes,
Sometimes
that too. But I mean, if you say that you reject religion, and then you say that you're pro-religion.
Yeah, and again, you had like SS had God with us, and SS had
I mean, this is my entire thing. The Nazis weren't really strong when you look at it as a strong religious movement. What they were was a rather secular religious, or I would almost call them religious, a secular religious ideology.
I would say
because
they're
they-
more what do you call it, supremacist.
Yes, yeah,
ideology.
I mean were supremacists, but I would say that almost their ideas about the coming of the new, Third Reich, the thousand-year empire, thousand-year Reich, and all of that had to do with idea about some sort of millenarian, almost salvation type of religiosity.
It was also, let's just say, another bogus ideology in its whole. And same with communism, same with Mao and Stalin as well. They believed in a bogus ideology. And Stalin actually did have a lot of support from the Russian Orthodoxes as well, too. So, and
initially, but I mean, the
Mao,
Nazis were very strong opportunists.
Yes, and Mao himself.
But still, this has, and even when it comes to communism, that is openly atheist in its ideology, it still doesn't matter because it is that drives the ideology. A lack of God doesn't drive someone to do action. You have to have additional ideas that actually drives action.
And keep in mind, comparing communism to atheism is like comparing a dog to a chair.
No, it's more like saying that comparing monotheism as an idea to Christianity, Judaism, or Islam as specific cases of it.
Well, hear my example. Boy. All right. The reason I say dog and chair is because they both have 4 legs. That's where the similarities start, and they stop there completely. And which is, again, they're both just not pro-religion, and that's where it stops. That's just small similarity, because technically not all atheists are communists. If anything,
no, but that was why I said monotheism, because that's the idea about one God, and then you have these various ideas or religious systems like Christianity, like Islam, and there are various sub ideologies within them.
Yeah,
they have this idea about monotheism, but monotheism, except when you think about Islam and the entire focus upon Tawheed and what derives from it, and all of these other things, they are actually further derivatives and further thinking, and it's this further thinking and these other statements and other values and ideas in this ideology that they are actually causing action rather than just the statement, there is no God.
Right. So, and by the way, let's continue with this.
Except God.
We derailed a lot.
Yes, but it is also because he's doing it, bad logic and
I know
arguments here.
Saying, because Judeo-Christian values weren't there, hence Nazism and communism took place. But Judeo-Christian values didn't exist in ancient India, did they? Pre-colonialism India, they weren't there, but we still had a stable functioning society. So that logic falls apart there.
Oh, Nick, I didn't notice it, but Nikhil has changed his
to PragerU.
You notice
yes.
it now, Janae? Yeah, yes, I think Drastic also makes a good comment. The only reason Stalin went after church was it was an organized institution that could challenge his power. If an authoritarian sees religion as a threat, they are anti-religion. Yeah.
It's kind of like, though you should... Yeah, I can kind of agree, but you also need to understand that Stalin actually did intermingle with the church later during the war because he needed support against Hitler. Yes. And also, before that, since Stalin was, the leader of the communists in Russia after he had gotten rid of Trotsky, he was the undisputed leader. You have to understand that ideologically, communism is opposed to religion, and
Yeah, I
thus,
don't-
in order to establish, legitimacy, he needs to go against the church.
Yeah, but he did have some alliances based on.
Yeah. I mean, he was an opportunist, very
Yeah.
much like Hitler.
Yeah. And yeah, like Drastic says, if an authoritarian sees religion as useful, they are pro-religion. And I have seen this a lot too with a lot of authoritarian regimes, that is. By the way, let's continue. Let's continue with this.
Yes.
Yeah, let me play it.
People. It is also not a coincidence that the first societies in the world to abolish slavery, an institution that existed in every known society in human history, were Western societies rooted in Judeo-Christian values.
Oh, no.
And so were the first societies to affirm.
No, he's wrong. Islam was the first one to do so.
I mean,
well,
there has actually been, societies without slavery before Christianity.
Exactly. Especially like ancient Persian societies that did not have slavery.
At least not they had in the outer territories, but in the core territories they did not, and they tried to actually tax it away.
Yep. And
so they did, and China has also not has had periods without slavery as well. Sure, they had enormous amounts of forced state labor, but they didn't have privatized labor that was, where people were sold as objects, which is slavery.
Yeah, and in the Western society, like for example in Britain as well as in the United States, I would use the United States as an example. Many religious folks opposed the ban on slavery. They were pro-slavery. So if anything, the biggest backlash came from the religious. Of course, you had the landowners for sure, but the religious also made because they're seen as the Christian slaves, or like the non-Israelites, so to speak, as they saw them. So they used those biblical arguments for slavery, that is. So the Bible was the biggest tool that was used in the pro-slavery movement.
But it was also very much used in the abolitionist movement too. So this is very, this is a clear picture like he paints it as.
Yeah, and in Britain, for example, many, of course, there were the Good Samaritan kind of Christian values that were saying, they were arguing amongst themselves that we should stop. I think there's some moral wrong here. Again, in Britain specifically. So in Britain, it was a different story. In the United States, it was a different story. So
I mean, the relationship between slavery and Christianity is extremely complex.
And keep in mind, though, but
it isn't as straightforward as Christianity was pro-slavery or Christianity was anti-slavery. It was both, depending upon group, sect, and interpretation.
Well, keep in mind, though, there's not a single Bible verse that says ban slavery, for example. So the Bible isn't a great argument for slavery either.
No, but actually, there has been, ideas about that you shouldn't enslave your Christian brother, and
yeah, again,
the Catholic Church had an official, anti-slavery stance.
Well, keep in mind, it shouldn't be a Christian brother. That was the caveat, right? It can be a pagan, it can be anybody else, minus a Christian brother.
Yes, but do you know what the statement about in the Catholic Church regarding Spain and Portugal's slave trade was?
What was the Catholic churches?
They kind of said that we don't want you to actually do this slavery because we don't want you to enslave the fellow Christian brothers. Oh, but it's fine. They are pagans. All right, then we want you to either convert them or kill them.
Yeah, convert them or kill them. Yeah, there was also.
And when you convert them, you shouldn't enslave them anymore.
Yeah.
So they did still, in practicality they were against slavery.
But man, the alternatives don't sound so great either. So it's like, the alternative doesn't exactly make.
No, but still, the official, it still doesn't change that the official position of the Catholic Church was no slavery.
Yeah, well, keep in mind,
This doesn't mean though that the Spanish crown or the Portuguese actually cared.
Yeah. And it's especially like how Drastic puts it, slavery for thee, but not me. And that
I mean, kind of, but it wasn't. That wasn't actually the Catholic stance. The Catholic stance was no slavery, and if you're a pagan, then you should die.
Yeah, no,
Or
keep in mind, though, we're looking at the Catholic stance,
or convert.
and we
Yes.
had the Protestant world had a different scenario.
Yeah, there was very much more multiple polarized when it came to the churches.
Yeah, and keep in mind, like overall, at least
Ironically enough, the Catholic parts of Europe, Spain and Portugal, and even France in the middle Americas, on the various islands such as Haiti and were actually bigger slave traders and bigger users of slaves than what happened in North America.
Yeah,
with the Protestants, but that was separate from the religion.
But keep in mind, though,
the funny thing is that the rules that they actually used regarding slavery, they actually more or less, at least in the case of Spain and Portugal, they more or less borrowed directly from Dahiri and Maliki Islamic jurisprudence.
Yeah, a lot of Islamic jurisprudence did affect the rules on slavery, but also I'm also thinking there's not a single biblical or Quranic verse that has an official ban on slavery or says this is wrong. It doesn't say that.
No.
It just says free slaves, or if you let's just say if you break a slave's teeth, for example, you're supposed to compensate them. So you can abuse slaves as long as you don't break their teeth. So it's
hello, Saint Sammy.
Hello, Saint Sammy. But yeah, I think what do you call it? Let's continue with this the slavery thing, because again, it's just so wrong, because there were societies that did abolish slavery. Then it came back. It was just, and also nobody talks about the slavery that still existed in parts of the United States after the ban on slavery.
Oh, you're meaning it's the forced prison labor?
No. There were actually parts. There were some slave.
They were indentured servants, not slaves, technically.
No. I'm not talking about those in the United States.
Yes, United States, indentured servitude usually.
Yeah. So we still had the indentured servitude issue as well too. So
yeah,
it wasn't
technically it isn't slavery, but it is still horribly abusive.
Yeah. And
I mean, it's kind of like also when I mentioned China, and I said that they didn't use slavery. It's true, but it did have very brutal forced state labor instead.
Yeah, prison labor. So that was an alternative too. But yeah, let's continue with what do you call it? It gets very giving Judeo-Christian values the credit. It's not exactly. No.
All right, let's play this.
From universal human rights, to emancipate women, and to proclaim the value of liberty.
Emancipate women? Judeo-Christian values hate women. What are they talking about?
All right.
Yeah.
Today, the rejection of Judeo-Christian values and moral absolutes.
I will answer this, that if you think Christianity, again, I'm going to be the devil's advocate for Christianity here for once.
All right, I'm pulling out my holy water for you.
Yeah. The thing is that it did actually improve the situation for women in the Roman Empire. And you can see that, because Constantine did actually, write in a lot of improvements for women when it comes to, domestic abuse. You could no longer kill a woman.
Oh,
they didn't,
that was domestic abuse. And I remember the terminology.
But you could, for example, kill your daughters because they were born as daughters anymore. You couldn't kill your wife whenever she displeased you like you could before and such.
Yeah, it was it's still like it's small improvement, but it's still not exactly the greatest.
It isn't, good by our standards, but
No. Well,
I will give the devil his, or rather, I will give Christ his due here.
Okay, I'm gonna use my holy stick here and beat the devil out of you, and like shoo away, devil. But yeah, you could no longer just give her a savage beating. Exactly. And like, yeah, you could give her a savage beating, or flogging, I would say, and it's still.
But still, see progress.
Horrendous. Jimmy,
But Moose, what's the difference?
Savagely beating you with a holy stick.
Moose, you're mistaken though. That wasn't actual anger. That was just BDSM.
Darn it, Nick. Okay, I'm getting another holy stick for you. I'm getting another holy stick. I already disqualified this one devil now.
That dog doing the bonking due to the horny. If you've seen that meme.
Yeah, I'm getting 2 holy sticks for both of you.
Oh yeah, no, because the thing is, you weren't there, so you don't know. But because I'm Dennis Prager, I'm old enough to actually have seen this stuff. They were praying, "Oh God!" They were saying, "Oh God." That's the discussion that happened.
All right,
BDSM.
Jimmy. Yeah, I know. That's why I'm getting a separate stick for you as well. Separate holy stick for both of you.
All right.
Jesus, holy Christ on a pokey stick.
Yes. All right, let's continue.
Has led to a world of moral confusion. In the New York Times in March 2015, a professor of philosophy confirmed this. He wrote, "What would you say if you found out that our public schools were teaching children that it is not true that it's wrong to kill people for fun? Would you be surprised? I was." The professor then added, "The overwhelming majority of college freshmen view moral claims as mere opinions." So then, whatever you believe about God or religion, here is a fact. Without a God who is the source of morality, morality is just a matter of opinion.
Oh, no.
So, if you want a good world, the death of Judeo-Christian values should frighten you.
Oh, no.
Yes,
I'm Dennis
let's
Prager.
follow the opinion of people that actually didn't know much about the world or lived in a world entirely different from ours. Let's follow their opinions instead of opinions of modern people.
And the professor.
That would work so much better.
Yeah.
I'm being sarcastic, by the way.
Yeah, let's bring back witch burning, shall we? Let's bring back superstition. Dumbass. I'm sorry if I'm a bit harsh on this dumbass. But like, it's so infuriating when he just.
It is.
It's like, oh, fact without God. It's not a fact. A God is not an established fact.
Nope.
There's so many, and I think it's sort of like a very what do you call it? He's switching the definitions, and he's not even defining murder. He's not defining theft or rape or something like that. He's not defining crimes, so to speak. And in some cases, if you kind of see slaves are getting raped. Slaves get raped, and that's okay. So in that essence, you're not exactly making a good case. And then also with theft, for example, you are stealing someone else's resources by taking over. That's a form of stealing too. So it gets so stupid, honestly. But yeah, I think those were the 2 videos that we had.
I think it's we can probably go into closing statements.
Yeah, we can go into certain closing statements. I know I wanted to review some Islamic stuff before we head off.
Yeah, sure.
There was a miracle claim by Smile to Jannah. And I'll share the screen 1 second. And then there was also a video of, what do you call it? Hang on, I have to kind of.
So I'm gonna be playing that whenever Moose speaks from now on.
Quiet, boy. All right. No, not doing that, boy. Okay, so I have the Surah Nur thing open. No. Wait, how do you? This is what I hate about YouTube from shorts, of Instagram shorts. There's no way to play or let me just share the screen instead. Share a screen. It's annoying, all this stuff. Sorry, guys. You guys can see this. I'm gonna start playing it from the start. Let me just play it again. Smile to Jannah. It's gonna reload the page. A genius miracle.
Which is the chapter of Noah. The total amount of verses are 28. So let's minus the verses from the chapter. Yeah, 71 minus 28 is 43. So 43 is the amount of times Noah is mentioned in the Quran. There are 43 chapters after this chapter that do not mention Noah, and there are 43 chapters that come before that do not mention Noah either. How many do?
Yeah, you guys were saying something?
This video follows the same logic of, oh, there's 28 verses, 2 plus 8 plus 1 for one God only makes 11, and 8 plus 1 makes 9. Therefore, 9/11 is true.
Oh,
This
no.
guy follows like the same logic.
Yeah.
You mention Noah? Well, it's 28, the number of verses in this chapter. If you look at Nuh, Nuh is a 3-letter word. The first appearance of Nuh is in chapter 3. Yes, and it's first mentioned in verse 33. Let's look at chapter 71, which is the chapter of Noah. The total amount of...
Yeah, so you guys get
Go
the
back
gist.
to PragerU.
What?
Can we go back to PragerU? That was preferable.
Yeah. This sounded like, and someone actually, this was an interesting comment. I think this was from a Muslim. He said these things are not actual miracles. Any human can write a book with those so-called miracles. Please try to show actual scientific miracles of the Quran, as there are plenty of them, and refrain from mentioning these so-called miracles as they do not prove anything. Like, he's using some logic, at least. And then, of course, there's some dumbasses. People ask, how is the Quran from God? So this was just stupid. I have another video, which I sent to Nick because, again, Nick and I are constantly sharing nonsense.
Oh, no, you send me nonsense memes, I send you nonsense books.
Yes. There's a song, apparently.
Trembling what we are going to witness. I'm trembling before what we are going to witness, and we haven't even witnessed
All right.
it yet.
All right. I am so happy that I have made. All right. So let me just. Okay. Gustach ke sarkar. Okay. I'll actually. The translation is very deceptive. This is from ex-Muslim, is a Pakistani ex-Muslim. This is on a Pakistani national TV show. And he's singing, Muslims will cut off the heads of blasphemers. Now, gustach means blasphemy, right? Gustach. He uses the term. And what are you laughing at?
Alhamdulillah. I put up a comment that same Sammy.
All right, there are 72 sects and 72 words. That can't be a coincidence. Oh man! All right, let's.
I will meet all 72 hurus.
All right,
inshallah, mashallah, God willing.
Inshallah.
All right, boy. All right. So what they're saying is, Musalman sar kaat ke rakh denge uske like what do you call gustachoga, which means the Muslims would cut off the head and put it down.
of the blasphemers. Not exactly cut off the heads of no. It's cutting it off, then putting it on a table. That's what it's saying. If anyone who it's not saying anyone who insults the scripture is, it's like Tohine Risalat, which is like the what do you call it? Whoever insults the prophethood, it's the prophethood. So we will, in night and day, we will burn him alive. Yeah, this is correct.
Burning alive is actually haram, and it's a lot of interpretations.
What do you call it? Was it sorry?
Burning people alive is the punishment of God, not of mortals.
Yeah, but here saying we will do it.
Yes, and I'm just pointing out, that technically this is one of those things when it comes to methods of executions that you are not allowed to do in Islam.
Yeah, well, especially when I remember Abbas, it was who condemned Ali for burning atheists and homosexuals, and he said, "I wouldn't use God's punishment to do that."
Yes, because the Prophet said ordered so as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Teri ab khair nahi means like, get ready. Get ready. You will be punished. Because Gustave Muhammad means insulters of Muhammad. Not blasphemers, insulters. Blasphemers is a simplistic translation. Insulters of Muhammad. Yeah, no.
Isn't music haram anyway? So why are they?
They're singing, but without music. Remember that.
Yeah.
Big difference.
All right. So yeah, Moose, we're at the 2-hour mark. So closing statements.
All right, Ginny, did you enjoy that?
I lack the word to describe my feelings right now.
Sorry, Ginny. I am so sorry. I have to put you through all this. But yeah, it was finally I got those two little things out of the way. Egg. Stop playing Islamic music or Islamic sounds whenever I'm speaking. All right. So overall, I think Ginny and I, when we were discussing, found a lot of them, the arguments were very deceptive, so to speak. But Nick, what is your opinion?
The great daddy PragerU or Dennis Prager.
Yeah.
He's not the smartest. He's not the smartest person out there.
Yeah. And Ginny, any last words before you drift into the realm of the jinns?
Yes. I would say that the best argument when it comes to, arguments regarding the creator existing is that just because a creation exists doesn't mean that the creator of that creation must be a thinking being. The creator can be just as a simple thing as a prime causal law of causation. And due to Occam's razor, I would say that is actually the more likely thing that you should adopt when it comes to the view of God. And when it comes to argument that God is necessary for morality, even if for objective morality, even if it is so that God is necessary for objective morality, his necessary existence for objective morality doesn't necessitate his real existence. It could be that, morality just is subjective.
Mm-hmm.
I would
Yeah.
still argue that this doesn't mean that it's unimportant, but still,
Yeah.
just because God is necessary for a good outcome doesn't mean that the world is so that there will be a good outcome or that God exists.
Yeah, and it's not dependent on the existence of a God. Also,
Yes.
and which one, and then also gets into the argument of, is this God or thing even alive today? Or like one can even make the argument, hey, what if that thing is dead now? So no longer alive. So many possibilities. Also, drastic. Nick's Prager picture's freaking me out. Now it's freaking you out? I think drastic. I think he's having some visual nightmares. Sorry, drastic. Nick?
Yeah, I tend to cause that.
Yeah. All right.
All right, let's cut the show. We'll be in the Discord.
Yeah, we'll see you all in Discord. Have a nice day, everybody.
Yes, see you in Discord.